What these nations are going to do that are meeting here, they are going to obviously talk about the issue, and you're right, it's very high on the agenda. I wouldn't necessarily say it's going to dominate this conference, but it is certainly one where these countries are going to be talking about it. And it really is one of the issues here at this G8 Foreign Ministers Conference, where basically all the countries are in agreement over what has to happen. They're going to issue some sort of declaration where they're going to condemn the actions that Pyongyang has taken in the past couple of weeks, and they're going to call for a toning down of the rhetoric. Beyond that, there really isn't very much that they can do. Of course, the U.S. has a very big interest in what's going to happen here. The U.S., of course, in that direct confrontation with Pyongyang. What's interesting, though, is that the Russians also seem to be fully on board with what all the other G8 countries are doing, the Europeans and the Americans. The Russians also saying they believe it's a very dangerous situation, and they are saying that what Pyongyang is doing is very dangerous as well. So at the very least, they're going to show a lot of unity on the issue and send a very strong message to the North Koreans that what they're doing right now is not acceptable to the G8 countries. Zane?
Fred, what are some of the other issues that the leaders there are going to be talking about?
Yeah, it is a broader conference, and there are other issues on the agenda as well. It is, of course, one that's going to set the agenda for the G8 conference that's going to take place in Northern Ireland later this year. Syria is one of the major issues, and really the one that's very divisive here. You have, on the one hand, countries like Britain and France who want to take stronger action to support the opposition, want to deliver more arms. You have the U.S. that's also sort of going down that path, but really isn't at that stage yet, still very concerned about weapons they're getting into the wrong hands. One of the other issues, actually, that's very interesting and is on the agenda for the first time at a conference like that is efforts to prevent sexual abuse sexual violence in conflict zones. Of course, there was a very condemning report by Save the Children only a couple of days ago that said a lot of the sexual violence in conflict zones is aimed at children and underage people. One of the people who's taken that up is the UK Foreign Secretary, William Hague, and he had this to say before going into the conference.
We're going to discuss my own personal priority of preventing sexual violence in conflict, and we'll be joined by two UN representatives, by the UN Secretary General's Special Representative and by the UN Envoy on Refugees later this morning, and we'll be able to make a public declaration of what we have agreed on this vital subject.
So Angelina Jolie will be here to talk about the issue as well. And basically, they just want to sort of say, lay the groundwork to try and prevent sexual abuse in conflict zones. One of that is funding organizations that combat sexual abuse in conflict zones and also really trying to get people who commit such crimes to justice.